Tonight, collapse. The search and rescue effort in the wake of a Florida condo's catastrophic failure. Plus,
we need leaders in Washington to wake up.
The worst gun violence in over 2 decades.
We have an opportunity to come together now as Democrats and Republicans, as fellow Americans.
The White House plan to combat the surge in crime. This as the former president's Border Patrol chief is shown the door. And at long last...
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Vice President Harris prepares to see the humanitarian crisis for herself. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Holding out hope as rescuers continue their search for survivors in Florida. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. Right now, the search and rescue effort is heading into another night in the wake of a catastrophic collapse of a condominium in Miami.
Even after dozens of rescues today, 99 people are still unaccounted for tonight. And South Florida is bracing for possibly many more confirmed deaths in this horrific tragedy. Dale Hurd has our top story.
It happened at 1:30 this morning as people slept in the quiet town of Surfside, 6 miles north of Miami Beach. An entire wing of a 12-story beachfront condo suddenly collapsed with a roar, trapping residents in rubble and twisted metal.
The northeast corridor of the apartment had collapsed, approximately 55 apartment units.
Building resident Barry Cohen thought it was a thunderstorm.
We opened up the door from our apartment, and there was a huge pile of rubble and dust. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, we couldn't open the door because the steel had bent in the door.
More than 80 fire and rescue units were sent to the scene. Drones surveyed the area. First responders rescued one young man from the rubble, using a bucket to take people off their balconies. Dozens of people were pulled from the wreckage, and heavy equipment was brought in to help stabilize the structure.
There's a third of the entire building that you cannot see from the street, but it's completely gone in the back towards the beach side.
2 people were taken to a local hospital this morning, where one died. 15 families walked out of the building on their own. As many as 99 people are still unaccounted for, but some may not have been in the building at the time of the collapse. Surfside Mayor Charles Burkett was not optimistic that very many more survivors will be found.
The problem is the building has literally pancaked. It has gone down, and I mean there's just feet in between stories where there were 10 feet.
The entire structure is now considered unsafe, and residents have been taken to a nearby recreational center and will have to be relocated. As for what could have caused it, repair work was being done on the building's roof, but authorities have not yet said whether that could have been a factor in the collapse. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Dale. Turning now to news here in the nation's capital. Rarity in Washington, D.C. these days, compromise.
President Biden and a group of senators striking a deal on infrastructure. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has more on the $1 trillion proposal.
Well, John and Jenna, the big news today is that they have a bipartisan deal on infrastructure, and President Biden supports it. Now, both parties agree that they didn't get everything that they wanted in this bill, but with the president now on board, lawmakers are hopeful that it will get the 60 votes needed to pass the Senate.
We need physical infrastructure, but we also need the human infrastructure as well. They were part of my overall plan. What we agreed on today is what we could agree on. The physical infrastructure. There was no agreement on the rest. We're going to have to do that through the budget process. And we need a fair tax system to pay for it all. I'm not going to rest until both get to my desk.
Democrats are hoping to accomplish Biden's human infrastructure agenda through the budget reconciliation process in the Senate, which only requires 50 votes to pass. Yet that bill could come with a hefty price tag that some moderate Democrats might be hesitant to support. President Biden, however, says he won't sign the bipartisan infrastructure bill unless the reconciliation bill hits his desk too. John, Jenna?
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson, thank you. And from infrastructure to crime, a dramatic spike in crime has created a political problem, that is, for Democrats, prompting President Biden to announce a strategy to combat the surge across the country.
Republicans blame the rise in crime on Democratic leadership in big cities and movements like defund the police. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports on Biden's plan to confront the violence.
2020 was the deadliest year for gun violence in more than 2 decades. 2021 is already on track to be worse.
We need leaders in Washington to wake up to this crisis. Wake up.
Through the first 5 months of this year, gunfire killed more than 8,000 people in the U.S. That's about 54 people a day, according to the Gun Violence Archive.
A bullet just comes straight through the window. You know, it's like, are we safe home or are we safe outside? Where are we safe at?
Chicago is one of the cities battling a surge in gun violence, and far too many of the victims are children.
You have parents reluctant to allow their little children to go to parks, to go out and play. You know, we've had quite a few children who have been shot and killed under the age of 16. And that just should not be.
Pastor Corey Brooks runs a nonprofit in Chicago focused on ending violence. He told CBN News the situation there has gotten so bad, it's now affecting the economy.
In our neighborhood alone, we had a McDonald's of all things to close because of the violence. We just recently had a Walgreens to close just because of the violence. So you have this violence in these neighborhoods, and then you have things closing as a result, and people losing jobs, and it becomes even more difficult and more stress.
The Fraternal Order of Police released these statistics. Homicides up by 58% in Atlanta, 533% in Portland, shootings up by 64% in New York, and violence against law enforcement is also spiking. Ambush-style attacks up over 70% from this time last year. The Biden administration has a new plan to tackle the rising tide of crime in America.
We have an opportunity to come together now as Democrats and Republicans, as fellow Americans, to fulfill the first responsibility of government on our democracy, to keep each other safe. Enough.
The plan includes a new campaign to crack down on illegal gun sales, while also instituting a zero-tolerance policy for licensed gun dealers who violate federal gun control laws. It also provides cities with guidelines on how to use leftover COVID relief money to fund efforts to combat gun violence. And the president promoted community policing, focusing on building better relationships between officers and their communities. Experts are unclear on what exactly caused this surge in violence, but expect it's a perfect storm of factors. Widespread unemployment, COVID stay-at-home orders, an increase in gun sales, and a decrease in police resources amid protests. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Caitlin. And joining us now is Clarence Page, Pulitzer Prize-winning syndicated columnist and senior member of the Chicago Tribune editorial board. Clarence, it's great to have you with us this evening. We want to talk to you about Chicago. Chicago is on pace for 800 murders in 2021. That's even more than what was last year, 769 homicides. You've been with the Chicago Tribune since the 70s. Is this the worst level of violence that you've seen?
I think it's the worst level since the 70s. There was a big spurt of violence in the late 70s when I was on the police desk at the Tribune. And the difference, though, these days, part of the difference is healthcare. Hospitals, emergency rooms are able to handle gunshot victims more efficiently than in the olden days. And so a lot of people are only being listed as wounded instead of dead, which is a plus. But it can be a little misleading when we're trying to gauge year to year. But the important thing is these kind of trends are very hard to predict, if not impossible. I mean, nobody wants to have high crime, high violence, high homicide rates, but it happens. Like in the 60s, it happened. Then in the mid-90s, there was suddenly a great national crime decline after 1994. Some attribute that to the crime bill that Joe Biden sponsored. Others say that, well, a lot of different factors, in fact. But now, all of a sudden, in the last couple of years, it has gone back up again, not just in Chicago, but nationally. And that is causing a lot of consternation and a new debate as to the cause of it. That's what Joe Biden was trying to tackle.
Clarence, as you just alluded to, the surge in crime and violent gun deaths is nothing new. I want to ask you, though, after a political cycle in which Republicans attacked Democrats over some in the party pushing to defund the police, why the change of heart now? It seems like there's a stronger tone and a greater sense of urgency that we didn't see or hear before.
Well, there's no change of heart, but you see the change of coverage. During the campaign, you heard a lot of different voices, some of whom wanted to defund the police. Joe Biden never wanted defunding of police, and you may recall he caught a lot of heat from the left wing of the party because of that. But nowadays, you're seeing that cry picked up by a lot of people. Eric Adams in New York, a retired police officer, led in their initial balloting for mayor, a black Republican in a very Democratic town. But a lot of New Yorkers are fed up with the sudden upsurge in violent crime as well, just like people in Chicago and around the rest of the country. So I think Joe Biden is riding with the political tide, trying to sound tough on crime, but not as tough as he sounded back in the early 90s when that first crime bill was passed.
Yeah. Clarence, is the additional funding, though, and the resources to law enforcement from this White House too little too late?
Well, you can't say anything is too late. I mean, it would be great if we could predict these kind of surges before they happen. But I think as far as too little, that's the question of the kind of priorities. This bill, or the package that Biden is proposing, is much more aimed at the root causes of crime. But also he's calling for crackdowns on unregistered weapons, crackdowns on illegal gun dealers. And even the NRA agrees that we shouldn't allow illegal gun sales. So Biden is trying to get a consensus here, people on the right and the left, for things like background checks, which have about 80% support around the country, including gun owners. And that sort of thing should help. Right now in Chicago, there's a steady flow of traffic from out of state, even though they've got tough gun laws in Chicago and nearby. A steady flow from next door in Indiana. The Republican U.S. attorney worked with Democratic Mayor Lori Lightfoot on cracking down on that this past year, and that's had an impact. So that's the kind of direction Biden is pushing in.
Clarence, my apologies for stepping on you earlier. Former President Trump claimed the mantle of law and order during the 2020 campaign, painting Democrats as weak on crime. That strategy didn't work, though, with Democrats gaining a lock on the House, the Senate, and the White House. What about the midterms, these upcoming midterms in 2022? Are Democrats in danger of voters favoring Republicans who, promote themselves as restoring law and order?
Well, Democrats are in danger, period. The remap doesn't go their way, and the polling shows that they have the kind of jeopardy that always happens with the midterms for the party that does not hold a majority in Congress, and that is, or I should say, the opposite party from the president always scores certain gains. So the pressure is on Biden to sound tough enough to impress the middle-of-the-road voters to swing in his direction without sounding so tough that he alienates his own base.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens. We still have a long time until 2022, so maybe this time next year it'll be more of an issue, and we'll see where things stand then, and voters will evaluate for themselves. Clarence Page, thank you so much. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Clarence.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And coming up, an extremely strong showing for the economy amid concerns over rising inflation, plus new jobless numbers.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. all the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch. Thanks for joining us. Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
The Millsburg Falls man come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back. A roaring post-COVID economy now growing at a solid clip in the first 3 months of 2021. The first quarter saw a 6.4% growth rate, setting the stage for what economists say could be the strongest economic year on record in some 7 decades. The news comes amid this week's jobless claims declining now for the second week in a row. Weekly unemployment claims hit 411,000 last week. That's more than the 380,000 economists had expected. The results, though positive, underscore a still choppy pandemic recovery with a record 9.3 million job openings.
And joining us now is Greg McBride, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Analyst for Bankrate. Greg, it's great to have you with us. Let's start with the jobless claims, now in decline for a second week in a row, but with 9.3 million job openings, as John just mentioned. There are still hundreds of thousands of Americans out of work. How is that possible?
Well, you've got 9.3 million job openings, and you have 14.8 million Americans that are still collecting some form of unemployment insurance. There's definitely a mismatch, whether it's availability or skills. Everywhere you drive, you see a lot of help wanted signs. The economy is roaring back. That's the good news. It's going to take a little bit of time to close that gap. There are job openings, but this type of economic growth and the revenge spending that we're starting to see from consumers, that's just going to power the economy even more. I think, which is good news, for business owners. They just need help filling those open positions.
The economy, Greg, has been extremely strong in the first quarter. Many expect to keep growing for the rest of the year. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that 6.4% growth rate for the first quarter was outstanding, but I expect the economy is going to accelerate even further from there. For the year, the economy is expected to grow in excess of 7%. And in particular, I think the second quarter and third quarter, those are really going to stand out as the stalwarts, when we kind of stack the quarters up against each other at the end of the year. This is going to be the fastest year of economic growth, probably since the early 1980s. And we've got an economy that is not only growing back to its pre-pandemic size, but expected to become bigger than it would have been if we had not had a pandemic. So the economy definitely roaring back and still accelerating.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk, Greg, about spending programs here in Washington. We were talking about the infrastructure plan, $1 trillion that got a lot of movement today. What effect would these kind of spending plans have on the economy?
Well, ultimately, that's going to be good. It's going to be job creation. It's just that, that operates with a pretty notable lag. It's not something that's going to provide an immediate shot in the arm to the economy. It's probably 12, 24 months away before you really start to see actionable economic activity. But nonetheless, we'll take it. The growth rate this year is going to be outstanding. Growth rate next year will be decent, but the pace of growth is going to slow down. So these additional infrastructure or any things that create jobs, that's going to provide a boost at a time when we'd otherwise be seeing a more trend rate of growth in the economy.
Well, certainly good news, and for a lot of folks just ready to, as you say, use that revenge economy, if you will, holding on to all the savings from the COVID period. So, Greg, we always appreciate Bank Rate, and we appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights.
Thanks so much.
Well, when we come back, big changes in President Biden's border policy just as Vice President Harris travels to the border. We explain after this.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians in
Iran
are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Saturday night at 6 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
To the southern border, a shakeup in President Biden's border policy. The head of the Border Patrol is out, and some asylum seekers will get a second shot.
All this as the vice president prepares to go see the crisis firsthand tomorrow. Senior national affairs correspondent Heather Sells has the details.
Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott is out less than 2 years after former President Trump appointed him.
A longtime supporter of border walls, he told CBN News in 2019 that the barriers slow down illegal crossers and buy agents time to respond.
Where we've put that in place, we were able to increase our effectiveness from about 10% to over 95%.
Also Wednesday, the vice president announced she will visit the border on Friday. For weeks, she's taken heat from both parties and the media for not going, even as she led efforts to contain migration.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
The White House press secretary stressed that Harris timed her trip to coordinate with Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. In early June, Harris traveled to Guatemala and Mexico, focusing on the root causes of migration, and she urged Central Americans to stay at home.
Do not come.
Yet now, the U.S. is opening its doors to potentially tens of thousands of asylum seekers. The Biden administration is offering a second chance to those forced to wait in Mexico under a Trump policy and had their asylum claims dismissed or denied. This comes alongside record waves of unaccompanied migrant children, with many fleeing violence and extreme poverty.
These children are looking for safety, and they're looking to be reconnected to their families. They've suffered in ways that many of us can't imagine.
Jose fled El Salvador several years ago at age 14 after 2 gang members shot him.
I basically told my mom and dad that I wasn't safe in my home country anymore and that I needed to leave the country.
About 1 in 3 unaccompanied children, like Jose, are able to obtain legal status and stay in the U.S. Today, he's preparing to graduate from a Christian college and start a career in law enforcement. He credits Bethany Christian Services for connecting him with his foster mom.
She welcomed me at her home even though she didn't know who I was, even though I was from another country.
Former President Trump will visit the Texas border with Governor Greg Abbott next week as immigration shapes up to be a major issue for 2022. Heather Sell, CBN News.
Still ahead, who let the cows out? A jailbreak for cows caught on camera.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Finally tonight, who let the cows out? Dozens of cows escaped a slaughterhouse in Southern California and took to the streets stampede style.
And Jenna, it was captured on video showing at least 40 cows roaming free for over an hour in a residential neighborhood near Los Angeles. Cars, cows, and scooters there. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies, with the help of experienced ranchers, rounded up the herd and eventually loaded them onto trailers.
You know, it's not very often you see them in a city like LA. You know, more rural parts of America, it's pretty commonplace. But
that's right. Thanks for watching.
Have a great night.